Welcome to our Free Speech Zone, where we do a deep dive into trauma and reintegration. This is Combat Citizen. Welcome back to the Combat Citizen Trauma and Reintegration Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Stanton, and we'll be going through your trauma and reintegration. So today's episode, we're going to bring back on Karl Monger of the GallantFew and just go through some of the things that are with that organization. More specifically, we'll talk about azimuth check and anything else that comes to mind. So welcome back, Karl.
Hey, thank you. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So I guess a good point to start with what I've done on other episode is somebody else is kind of take us through the initial starting with the GallantFew and then, going from there.
Yeah. So where do you want to start? We talked last time kind of about history and how the organization started up. You want to talk about veteran interaction or?
Yeah, let's do that. So the last episode, well, actually the one that we recorded didn't get recorded. It was crazy, but hey, learning things. Anyways, yeah. So let's start off with.
I like to make sure people learn.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, let's start with that. If a person initially is brought to your organization, and then either your website or any of your staff or anything like that.
Yeah. So since the last one didn't make it through, we'll back up just a step. Perfect. If that's all right with you. You're the boss. Your show.
That's perfect. That'll be wonderful.
GallantFew, our mission kind of has evolved. It's still the same, but it's evolving some to be more of a leader in the veteran transition space. And we had a board meeting right around Veterans Day in November. And one of the board members, because we've had a hard time trying to put our hands around exactly what it is that GallantFew does, because we're capable of doing so much. And so he said, really what you guys are trying to do, or what we're trying to do, is we're trying to perfect veteran transition. So that's our objective now, is to perfect veteran transition. And we don't talk about goals, because a goal is something that you kind of hope you'll get to. Maybe you'll do it someday, maybe you won't. But if you talk objective, that's the military attacks objectives. The military doesn't attack goals. So an objective requires a plan, it requires resources, requires a timeline. So if you say in your transition, my objective is to become a brain surgeon, then that implies a timeline and implies a lot of things that have to happen, right? If you say my goal is to become a brain surgeon, well, you might never go to medical school. So it's a different kind of a mental philosophy. So we start off everything that we do, and part of that perfecting veteran transition is making sure that veterans understand that they have to put an intentional plan in place if they want to go anywhere. But then a lot of times they need a little help along that path, or even establishing where they are. So we look at it there's really three big aspects to our initial interaction with a veteran. The first thing we want to do is we want to know, where are you right now today? Some people might call that a map check. We call it an azimuth check, right? So we're going to stop. We're going to figuratively throw our poncho liner over ourselves, get out our map and flashlight, and we're going to find out, where are we, right? So we're going to pinpoint where we are. You took our azimuth check. I saw that come through earlier. And the azimuth check is pinpointing where you are. Now you have to know the objective, right? What is long-term? What do you want to be? Do you want to be a nationally known podcasting host? Do you want to become a brain surgeon? Do you want to learn to fly plane? What is that long-term objective that you have for yourself? And a lot of times, a veteran hasn't gone through the process of identifying the things that in their life are absolute musts, or absolute importance to them. And so we go through a process of identifying what are those absolute musts, and then we develop what's that vision for the future. And amazingly enough, a lot of times it comes back to, I want to serve others. I want to help. I want to be a leader in my community. And so that can take a lot of different forms, right? But it doesn't just happen. You have to actually start doing something to make that happen. So that's the azimuth. So you have the azimuth check. Where are you now? Where's your objective? And now you have to set that plan that you're going to walk in order to get to your objective. Anybody who's ever followed an azimuth knows that, hey, if you're in an airplane and there's a storm, you have to divert around the storm, so you go off azimuth for a period of time. If you're walking through the forest in the middle of the night, there's a big tree in your way, you can't walk on azimuth through the tree, so you have to go around the tree, or maybe you fall down in a ditch, or you run through a spider web. But all those things take you off azimuth. So you have to get back on your azimuth so you can get to your objective. Because if you stay off azimuth, then the further that you go off azimuth, the further away from your objective you get. In military transition terms, being off azimuth is saying something like, well, I want to be a CPA someday. And you maybe enroll in classes, but the VA screws up your VA benefits, so the school doesn't get paid, so now you can't go to school, or you don't get the stipend to pay for your rent, or the class was way harder than you thought it was going to be, or the other kids in the class are ignorant, never been around the world, don't understand the perspective of a veteran. All those things are the spider webs, the trees, the ditches that interfere with your azimuth, and they start taking you off that azimuth. One of the big things that takes you off that azimuth is alcohol, right? So we have just about every veteran that is having some sort of a dissatisfaction with the way their life is going. Alcohol plays a huge component in that. So how do we identify ways to still enjoy alcohol responsibly, right? Unless you have a disease that causes you to not be able to stop, and then you have to go through treatment and all of that stuff. But how do you alter your habit? How do you dial back the drinking? How do you replace that with a habit that works better for you? And throughout this whole process, we ask ourselves a couple of questions. The first one is this going to work for me? So in every situation, and people that surround me get tired of hearing me say this, but they will say, hey, I'm getting ready to go do something. And I'll say, how's that going to work for you? So I'm getting ready to go get a beer. How's that going to work for you? Well, if they have a problem with alcohol, they might stop and go, well, if I drink one, then I'll drink 10, and then I got a big problem. So maybe it won't work for me, right? Or I'm going to go get a dip. I'm going to step outside and have a dip. Well, how's that working for you? Well, I'll probably die of cancer when I'm 50, but hey, I'm going to go get a dip right now. So once you start identifying things that don't work for you, you can start making a change in those habits. And a key one is with veterans is lack of purpose, lack of mission. You leave the military and your civilian job is not mission like it was when you were on active duty, right? If you work for a publisher, or you work for Walmart or Amazon, your fellow Amazon delivery driver is not going to lay down their life for that package they're getting ready to deliver, right? It doesn't even compare. So now you have people that are doing things for different motivations, and a lot of times they will do things to put themselves first, even if it hurts the people around them. And so that creates all of these issues. It gives a veteran, sometimes they want to lash out at that other person, right? And chew them out, or tell them how disgusted they are with the behavior, or they're going to just stomp off the job angry. Well, if you can stop for 1 second and say, how's this going to work for me? You'll realize it's not. So now can you take a breath? Can you identify an alternate course of action that will work for you? And maybe it's going to talk to a supervisor, or maybe it's looking for a different job or something, but it doesn't get you fired because you just punched your supervisor in the face. So that was a long-winded introduction there.
That was a good one, though. I mean, it was a lot of information. So thank you. Yeah, I was just thinking about some of the experiences that I've had with jobs and the things that I've wanted to say, and I'm like, if I do that, and I probably have done what you guys do already, and where I'm taking a step back and thinking about it and realizing, because I do this all the time now, where I actually think, okay, so how's this going to affect? I'm a big like second and third party effects kind of person. So I always think, so if I get into an argument with this person, is it going to lead into this? And then it's going to lead into jail time or whatever. And then you're realizing, well, no, I don't want to do that. Let's step back. And it sounds like that's exactly the thing that you're.
Yeah, and when you look at a job or even a relationship with another person, how many times do you stop and say, what and I don't mean this in a selfish kind of way, but what's my objective in this relationship, right? If you sit back and you say, my relationship with you, what's my objective here? Well, my objective is to be able to get the GallantFew message and perfect veteran transition out to as many in the United States as possible. And you're a platform that helps us to do that. So I want to foster that relationship along the way. If something happens and we blow a schedule or you don't show up when you're supposed to, then does it work for me to get all angry and hurt about it? No, it doesn't, because that doesn't further the ultimate objective. So when you think about whether it's with a significant other or with a classroom environment or job or whatever, have you looked at what is your ultimate objective with that? And then what are you doing? What are your daily actions that are taking you to achieve that objective? And I think it's human nature that most of us just do it kind of by accident, right? We let it happen. You're looking for a job, you apply to 25 places, you get maybe 2 or 3 callback, you get an interview. And if they offer you a job, I'm going to take it because I got to have money, right? It's kind of luck of the draw. It wasn't an intentional, this is the career path that I choose to follow. So I'm going to, by God, I'm going to work for this company. Okay, so then what do you have to do to work for that company? And that might drive you in a different direction in trying to get into that company as opposed to just applying online or whatever. So
Sure. Yeah, that's it's amazing how the difference between intentional and just flying by the seat of your pants can be, you know.
It also has to do with the questions that we ask ourselves. So when, and I haven't gone all the way through your azimuth check yet, and I don't think I'm violating any confidentiality here if I say that just when I briefly scanned it, you need to get some workout buddies and get a plan in place to go work out because you scored a little low on that aspect of it. But what happens? You get, you say, I have a goal of getting in better shape.
Mm.
What does that mean? Right? And how are you going to do it? But if you say, my objective is 12 months from now, I'm going to run a 10K, or I'm going to do an Ironman, or I'm going to ride my bike 30 miles. Mm. Having a specific quantifiable objective with a time frame. Now, if you're holding yourself to it, and if you tell other people about it, you can't back out because now they know you're going to do it. Now you have to go, oh man, it's cold and windy outside today. I don't want to go out and ride my bike. So you don't, right? Yeah. Because if it's a goal and it's something you really haven't quantified, then there's no compelling pressure to get you to do it. But if you've set that objective and you have a timeline and other people know you're going to do it, and even better, if someone is going to meet you so you can do it together, now there's accountability, and that starts putting a whole different kind of process in place. And I was talking about the questions. What's so important about the questions that you have? Mm-hmm. Someone might say, well, yeah, I'd like to ride my bike 30 miles, but I don't have a bike. So then what questions do you ask yourself? Well, most people will say, why don't I have a bike? Well, because I was in the Army and I don't have any money and the VA screwed me over and I don't have disability and so I can't afford to buy a bike. So I guess I'm not getting a bike. But if you say, instead of why don't I have a bike, if you say, what do I need to do to get a bike? Now it starts to unfold everything from borrowing one from someone to saving up money to buy one to, but it opens up opportunities that then you can start to intentionally pursue. It's not an excuse why you can't do it.
If I may, sorry, a little producer's
question. It's the voice from above.
It sounds like a lot of this just comes down to moving things into a personal responsibility and showing people that they can accomplish whatever they want to accomplish as long as they take ownership of it and say, what can I do to get this thing done?
Ownership is a big part of it. That's exactly right. But we have to train ourselves to think differently because let's say you just got in an argument with your significant other. It was stupid. And now that person's mad at you and you don't know if the relationship is going to continue. And in your head, you're probably like, well, why did I say that? Because I have post-traumatic stress, or because I'm a jerk, or because I was dropped on my head when I was a kid, right? The only way you can answer a why question always starts with because. If I say, why is the sky blue? There's some chemical scientific thing that says because of these things, it causes the sky to be blue. So same thing goes on when we're trying to not do something. And if we can say, what do I need to do to not say those kinds of things? What do I need to do to fix the relationship instead of why is this relationship broken? Then you get away from that excuse that even though you don't want it to, it makes it okay for the relationship to be broken.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was thinking about conversations that I've had with my wife and the times where things don't work. You know, the conversation didn't go as you expected, and you have to kind of take a step back and think, okay, you know, how do I move forward? And
yeah, I'll give you a simple example of a veteran who approached us within the last year. I try not to be very specific because I don't want anybody to say, oh, he's talking about me. But this veteran scored very low on our statement. On the azimuth check, there's 25 statements that you rate. One is not at all and 10's a whole bunch. And our defining question is, I believe life is worth living. One's not at all, 10's a whole bunch. So I think this guy scored like a 4. So when somebody scores a 6 or below, one of our staff members text calls, we figure out we're going to reach out to that person right away to make sure that they're okay. And when I got on the phone with him, I said, 4 out of 10, that tells me there's a 60% chance you might take your own life. And he says, well, you know, there's a lot of stress and finances are hard and home is kind of a drag. And well, so tell me about your home. Are you married? And he says, yeah. And I said, well, you have any kids? And he said, yeah, I've got a 3-year-old and a less than 1-year-old. So of course there's a lot of stress in the household. You got 2 young kids like that, you know, the finances and everything else, that's going to be amped up. So, and what was happening was he was letting the day-to-day issues that happened get so close in front of him that he couldn't see what the long-term objective was. And so what I did was I took him through a very simple visualization exercise. I asked him to close his eyes because his youngest was a girl. And I said, I want you to think 21 years into the future. Your daughter's 22 and she's getting married. And you tell me, what does the ceremony look like? Is it on a beach? Is it in a backyard? Is it in a church? Can you identify the music? You know, is there a breeze blowing by? Can you smell the candles? And you build this image of what it is so powerfully in your head that you can hear footsteps down the aisle, or you can hear, you know, the ocean. And then I said, okay, so now I want you to feel her hand in the crook of your arm because you're getting ready to walk her up the aisle. And so he stopped for a minute and he said, yeah, I can feel that. And I said, if you end your life right now, somebody else is going to do that. Right. So why don't you start thinking about, when times get rough, start thinking about what 20 years from now, 22 years from now is going to look like. And do you want to be a part of that? And if you want to be a part of that, then start asking yourself the questions, what do I need to do to be part of that? What do I need to do to be present in my wife's life, my kid's life? And what do I need to do to make sure that she's prepared to be married in 20 years? And it changes your entire perspective, because now you're not thinking about, well, crap, I can't pay the house bill.
Yeah.
You know, now you're thinking about, whoa, how am I going to get to there? So it drives different behavior and it changes motivations, and it takes things that can really detract you on a day-to-day, and it puts them in the longer term perspective.
It's a very powerful message. I mean, interesting. I mean, because a lot of the times, I mean, I have to deal with it all the time, you know, is thinking long-term versus short-term. And yeah, I like that one. I mean, if I had kids, that would be definitely the thing I would think about, but it's interesting. It's interesting how we tend to be living in the moment all the time, and anything that affects us tends to, yeah. And so,
yeah, there's another veteran that that had credit issues. So, tell me about the circumstances. You know, we don't dwell in the past other than to collect information about why are we here. That's the only time that we are allowed to use why questions when we talk. Is, okay, so why are we here? What happened that got us to this point? And in his case, it was a divorce, it was child custody issues, it was legal issues, it was, you know, all of these things, not having a job that paid a whole lot. And so he had lived on cash. His way of managing money was he would get his VA disability on the first of the month. He would figure out how many bills he had to pay. He would go get that much money out of the bank, and then he would pay each one of those bills like by hand. And I said, so, what's your credit? And his credit rating is like 620 or something like that. And I said, well, what kind of balance do you have on your credit card? And he's like, I don't have any credit cards. Why my credit should be better? I don't have any credit cards. I said, well, your credit's not better because you don't have credit cards, right? So what we have to do is we have to identify, where do you want to be? Well, I want my credit rating to be 800. Okay. So that's tough to do. So how do you get your credit rating to be 800? Well, first off, you quit paying cash for groceries and gas, and you get a credit card that has a $500 credit limit, and just about anybody will give a credit card to somebody that doesn't have great credit because they plan on you not paying your bills so they can make a lot of money on the interest. Right. But then you take those things that you're paying cash for and you pay them with the credit card, and then every month you take that cash and you pay the credit card bill off. So every month it goes to zero. And he did that for 6 months, and his credit rating went up like 40 points. Well, it's because now you're demonstrating the ability to manage credit. Whereas before you weren't demonstrating that. So now it's a whole different ballgame. When he went to go apply for a new apartment, now they're much more interested in talking to him because his credit rating is better, because he's demonstrated management of his money. Sure. It can be some things that are as simple as that for a lot of veterans, they think, well, I don't have very much in resources, so I have to live, day to day. No, you can actually start putting a plan in place that will help you, but you have to know where you're going. You have to set that objective, and then you have to set that plan. And if you're not, if you don't have the experience to set that plan yourself, he didn't know anything about credit cards. His family had never really sat him down and talked to him, explained to him how that worked. So you got to have somebody that knows how it works to sit down and say, here, let me show you how this works, and then try it. And if it works for you, then great. If it doesn't work for you, like, I can't do that because I end up spending all that money, and then now my credit card bill I can't pay. Okay, now we have to do something different. But in his case, he was able to exercise the discipline to save that money in his account and then just pay him off every time he got the bill.
Is it interesting? That's really cool, though. I'm not a my wife and I. She works in managing money, because I came from a family that didn't manage money really well, and now through being married 12 years, been slowly learning that. But it would have been nice to actually have a great conversation like that. It's like, this is what you need to do. This is how you do it, and it would have been so much better. But
well, yeah, you think when you're in the military, you know exactly how much money you're going to have every month,
right?
And you don't have to, if you're enlisted and living in the barracks, you don't have to worry about food. You don't have to worry about clothes. You don't have to worry about rent. And so what do? Well, you go buy F-850 pickup truck because you got an enlistment bonus and you don't have any other bills. Sure. And then 3 years later, you get out of the military, you still have 3 years left on that truck. And your truck payment is as much as most people's apartment payment. And now you're screwed because you don't have the money to be able to have a truck and an apartment, right? So it really, the self-discipline stuff, it starts early. We have been working really, really hard as part of perfecting veteran transition. We've been working with the Ranger Regiment, active duty Ranger Regiment, and they have put instruction on financial management in their RASP classes. So when a kid goes through the process of becoming a Ranger, before they actually become a Ranger, they get exposed to this. How much are you saving? What are you setting aside? Don't make stupid decisions. And, a lot of those men and women, they've never balanced a checkbook. They don't understand how that process works. And somebody needs to teach them. Otherwise, they're going to make some decisions that are going to have lifelong impacts, or at least 5 or 10 year long impacts after they get out. And none of that needs to happen. We can set them up for success early on. And that's part of perfecting veteran transition is from day one, you got to start planning for your transition. Whether
Sure.
you're getting out in 3 years or 30 years, you still are going to transition. Every person that goes in the military is going to leave the military. And you want to make sure that you're working your plan from day one, because then your opportunities, your chances of success are much greater.
I've of the veterans that I've talked to, a lot of their experience with getting out of the military, they half are like, well, I kind of had a plan, and half are like, well, I just got out, and they didn't go through any kind of transition. But it's interesting because I think the more that you have, and the ones that I've talked to that did actually have a plan, it seems like they were more in position to do better versus the
Amazing
ones.
how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's amazing. And I'm slowly learning about there's different programs and whatever else out there, but not everywhere. It's not universal in
Right.
all the branches and whatnot. But it'd be interesting if that became a universal, because guys need to think of that prior to getting out. And it doesn't seem like it's a, I don't know. It
Yeah,
doesn't
on
seem,
day one going in, if there's somebody out there that's enlisting now, just starting in the military, max out your investment account. Max it out. Whatever there's a match. It's like a 401k for active duty now. Just from day one, max it out. Forget the money even exists, right? And then, even if you spend all the rest of your money every month, 3 years down the road, you're going to have like $15,000 in your bank account, and then you can make a decision. Then you're not under pressure to have to get out because your finances are bad. You can decide maybe to stay in, or maybe you do decide to get out, but now you have the ability to buy some time before you have to take a job or you have to go to school. That's if you leave the military without a really solid plan and you have trouble getting a job, then what's going to happen? You have to use the GI Bill so that you have money to pay to live someplace, unless you go back to your parents' house. And who wants to do that after the military? So now, well, if I'm going to get money from the GI Bill to pay for a place to stay, now I have to take classes.
Sure.
Well, what do I want to be? I don't know, but I got to take some classes. So now you're burning this amazing educational resource, totally funded by the government, just so you can have an apartment. And 4 years down the road, maybe you lucked into something that's going to work out for you, or maybe you took a bunch of PUD classes and then halfway through you had a relationship issue and the VA jerked you over and you drank too much and you failed out of a class, and now the VA wants their money back, and life all of a sudden is just taking a really bad turn for the worse. So if you can leave the military and say, you know what, I am gonna, for a year, I'm gonna live off the money that I saved, and I'm going to decide, I'm going to try some things out. I'm going to explore different professions or careers. And then, only then, will I actually start applying that educational resource towards where I really want to go. But it's all about establishing that objective. And when you're under the gun to have income to live on, you don't have the luxury to sit back for 6 months or a year and say, well, I'm going to wait to go to school. Then you have to take underwater basket weaving classes so that you can start getting GI Bill money.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Do you find out a lot of the veterans that you're talking to? Is there kind of like a half and half of people that are actually have a plan versus not have a plan?
So a lot of the veterans that we work with come out of the special operations world, and they most of them did not plan to get out when they got out. So that's a high risk environment. I served in the Ranger Regiment. You can tell I got Ranger stuff all over my wall back there.
Sure.
When you do that kind of stuff, you get hurt, or you get crosswise with a supervisor, or you don't want to report that you have post-traumatic stress, so you drink and then you get a DUI and then you're out of the unit. So most of the people, if they don't stay in and retire from the military, something happened, and that something might have been the death of one of their brothers or sisters in the military. And so now you're thrust very quickly into this, well, crap, I thought I was going to stand for 20 years and now I'm out. So I really don't have a plan because I was going to be in the military for a long time, but now I failed at that. So they start thinking of themselves, their self-image starts going down because I wasn't physically strong enough to hang with everybody and I hurt my back, so I'm a failure. Or I wasn't strong enough emotionally and I got a DUI and so I'm a failure. Or my boss didn't like me and told me I had to go to a big army, so I'm a failure. Or I just couldn't emotionally deal with the loss of or injury of a comrade. So again, it turns into something that becomes a huge negative. And overcoming that right up front is huge. And I am convinced that anybody that chooses to go into the military, any branch, doesn't matter what your MOS or specialty is, you're self-motivated in some way, and you have a predisposition for service, right? So now after you get out, recreating that purpose can become a challenge. So you have to find out, what is that purpose? What is your mission? And if you don't know what that is, then your first purpose or your first mission is to find a mission or find a purpose. So if you don't know what your purpose is to find a purpose. So you always have a purpose, right?
Right.
And that some of those men and women need sometimes a little bit of negative reinforcement, maybe, to help push them in the direction that they might need to go. Because, hey, if you're feeling sorry for yourself and I get on the phone with you, I'm going to do my best to kick you in the ass and try and get you to stop feeling sorry for yourself. Because go back to that question that I mentioned earlier, how's that going to work for you? Mm-hmm. It's not going to get you anywhere. I've been listening to Dan Crenshaw's book on tape.
Oh, yeah.
And he talks about exactly that. He talks about how when he got blown up, lost his eye and all these other things, how all of those conditions, now he can't be a Navy SEAL anymore. In the flash of an instant, his whole career is gone. So, and when he looks back on his education, he didn't do that great in school. So when he applied for some of the other schools, they didn't accept him. So now, you can start feeling really sorry for yourself and end up being that guy that stays at his parents' house in the basement, drinks, and is on Facebook at 1 o'clock in the morning. Or you can stop feeling sorry for yourself, identify what's your next mission in life going to be, and start working towards that. And when he announced that he was going to be a congressman, everybody laughed, right? But he set that as his objective. He put a plan in place, and lo and behold, squeaked out the initial election and then ended up winning. And I really like him. I like a lot of the things that he has to say.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you. I tend to watch a lot of his proceedings or any.
Yeah, he explains what's going on, which is important.
Yeah, and his Instagram, and my wife follows him on Instagram, and we're always talking about it. So I really enjoy what he has to say. But so okay, so we were. I know the last time that we talked about the functional emotional fitness. How does that play into this whole talking about the objectives and all that?
Sure. Yeah, the functional emotional fitness is the bedrock of all of that, because that process helps you establish your vision of where you want to go. We start off with an assessment like the azimuth check that you took. It's very similar, only it's all focused emotional. So ours covers physical and social and professional as well, but that one is all emotional. And that establishes a benchmark. And from that benchmark, you can identify whether you're making progress in the way you want to go or if there are things you need to work on. But we start off by talking about what we call absolute musts. So if I say, in the area of love in your life, what is one absolutely must do? For every person, it's different. It might be a relative, it might be a spouse, it might be towards themselves, it might be their religion. But everyone has, if they sit and they really are honest and think about it, there is one thing in their life they absolutely must do. And maybe it's, I need to be a better husband to my wife, right? I absolutely must be a better husband for my wife. So then the next question we ask is why? Why must you be a better husband to your wife? Well, because this is a very rare use of the why question, but we ask it here. Well, because she's going to leave me if I'm not a better husband, right? So I'm just kind of generalizing. So the next thing we say is, well, what do you need to do to be a better husband to your wife? Now, if you're honest, you're going to identify, well, I need to text her and let her know I'm thinking about her. I need to cook dinner once in a while, or I need to clean up around the house, or I need to, whatever it is, you come up with things you absolutely must do for those absolute musts. And then the next thing that we ask is, okay, so what excuses do you ask about that? What excuses do you ask yourself, or do you say to yourself? Why are you not a better husband for your wife? Well, because she's always on my back. She's always ragging on me, or because, whatever it is, right? You get these excuses. Okay. So, and the last one is, then what questions do you ask about this thing, this absolute must in love? And the questions might be, why can't I be a better husband? It might be, what do I need to do to be a better husband? We try to push towards the latter. And we do love, we do health, we do wealth, and we do self-image. So the 4 areas that we explore: love, health, wealth, self-image. And if I say, what's one thing in your life you absolutely must accomplish in the area of health? You can probably think of something. Wealth, you can probably think of something. Self-image, you can probably think of something. So then you unpack that and you list all of those things. Once you have all of those things, then you say, okay, so every one of the absolute musts that you said you need to do, they're done. So create in your head a vision of what that looks like. What does it look like when the relationship with your spouse is where you want it to be? What does it look like when your health is where you want it to be? Your wealth, your self-image. And then you create that image in your head, and that becomes your objective. Okay. And so then you start identifying, what do I need to do to move towards that objective? So it's a very structured process. It works well for veterans because it's a checklist structured process. Follow the checklist, you get to go at the station. And every veteran that does this process, they experience growth in the areas that they were not expecting.
It seems like visualization is a big thing.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And part of what we talk about in the coaching is, how does your brain work, or how does your subconscious work? Well, you start off by asking yourself a question. You get up in the morning and you say, where are my keys? So that question gives you an image of, they're probably on the nightstand, or they're hanging on a peg, or whatever. So then you see that image, and then you can go and get the keys, right? If you didn't say, where are my keys, then you'd be like a robot just wandering around, not knowing what you were doing. That same kind of thing goes with emotional based questions. If you ask that question first, then you get a picture of what that is. If I ask you, for instance, when you were in the military, where did you go on leave? And when I ask that question, probably immediately a picture pops into your head about where you went on leave, right? Maybe you went to Hawaii. Well, the words Hawaii don't pop into your head. The beach picture pops into your head. Then you can articulate to me, well, I went to the beach. And then you can tell me how that made you feel. But you have to ask that question first. Where did I go on leave? Ooh, picture of Hawaii. Now I can tell you what it looked like and how I felt about it. And using that same process for all of those other things in life, like if your absolute must is to be a better spouse, and you say, one of the things that I can do is I can text or call my spouse every day to make them feel like they're special. Okay, so then you turn that into a question. What do I need to do to make my spouse feel special every day? And that might say, text in the morning, call in the afternoon. What do I need to do to remember to text in the morning? What do I need to do to remember to call in the afternoon? So you're generating these questions, which then your brain starts going, oh, if I write in my notebook at 2:00 in the afternoon, call my spouse and just say hi, then odds are much better you're going to actually make that happen. If you just say, I need to make sure that I talk to him once or twice a day, odds are probably good it's not going to happen at all. So, or it might happen twice and then you never do it again. So it's all about identifying what's really important to you. That was a super simple example, kind of a dumb example, but that gets you there. Well, I'll give you a personal example of mine. I did not know what I wanted to do professionally when I left the military. So I'm a a senior captain in a Ranger battalion, got a top secret clearance, and I had an opportunity for a job taken away from me. I got my feelings hurt, and I decided I'm not going to be in the Army anymore. Very, very short period of time. Within a month of the time that I lost the opportunity to do that job, I'm a civilian standing back in Wichita, Kansas. No idea what I wanted to do. So now what do? Well, I go, at that time, Monster wasn't a thing. So I go to companies that I think I might want to work at. I look for want ads, and I write letters, and I make phone calls, and I'm not saying I want to be something. I'm saying I need to get a freaking job. So I'm just throwing this net out all over the place. Well, the first job that I got wasn't a good fit for me, and I didn't understand what I was getting into. So guess what happens? That job only lasted for about 2 years. And then I quit that because it wasn't a good fit for me, and I went someplace else. Fortunately, I had a veteran that mentored me through the next process. So I did better then, but still I went and I sold construction equipment. I worked for a construction equipment dealer, and that was a lot of fun. I made good money there, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. So I wasn't as good at it as I would have been if it was really what I wanted to do. And so I fumbled around different jobs for 10 years after I got out of the military. And then when 9/11 happened, I saw the need to help Rangers not make some of the same mistakes that I had been making. And I ended up, through that work, forming the nonprofit. And then I found my purpose and mission. And now I know what I want to do. But for the first 10 years, for the first 8 years of that nonprofit of GallantFew, I always said, yeah, someday I'd like to be a counselor. I want to be a counselor. My goal is to be a counselor. Well, guess what? I never took one step towards becoming a counselor. And then a couple of years ago, I said, all right, I teach this Burris stuff, this functional emotional fitness stuff. Let me apply it to becoming a counselor. And so now I ask myself the question. I actually wrote it on a note card, and I stuck it on the mirror where I brush my teeth every day. And that note card said, what do I need to do to become a licensed counselor? So after I read that and looked at it for a couple of days, my brain is like, well, dummy, go ask somebody who locally in the Dallas area has a great counseling program for school. And so I emailed a couple of friends and said, who do you recommend? They were in the health profession. And they came back and told me University of North Texas. So I went to University of North Texas website and looked up their counseling program, and I saw here's the steps to apply. So now I'm in the process. Now I get the vision. I want to be a counselor. Now I'm going down that path. And I just finished my 3rd semester of master's degree. I've got 4 semesters left. So if I had not written that note card and put it on the mirror, I'd probably still today, someday I'm going to be a counselor, and it never happened. So it's got to be intentional. You got to force your brain to work on it, and you got to make it so that it bugs you if you don't.
It's amazing how stubborn your mind can be. But I like that. I mean, I've been thinking about personally, for me, that working out, and go back to that, we're talking about the working out, is finding something. Like when I was doing CrossFit, I had a goal, and doing the competitions and everything else, I had a goal, and then I didn't. And then now that's the reason why I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing anything.
Well, when you say goal, what was the goal?
Well, the goal was getting ready for the competitions that I was at.
So the goal wasn't to win the competition?
It's funny. It wasn't. It was just basically just get to it.
Yeah. So, and that's okay, but the difference between goal and objective, right, is the objective says, I am going to qualify for a competition.
Mm.
What do I need to do to qualify for a competition? The goal says, I want to get to a competition, and if I do okay, then I'll get there, right? So it's 2 different lines of thought. One, and maybe some people are able to take the goal concept and work it, but when you turn it into objective, and that requires, if you think that's a timeline of plan and resources, now, gosh, I'm probably going to have to invest $30 a month and hire a coach. And I'm going to have to find smaller competitions to test and work on before so you start putting a plan together. And then you say, by 18 months from now, I will qualify for a competition. So when you say, my goal is to qualify for a competition, then you go do the next one and, oh, I didn't make it.
But you get kind of discouraged and not doing
that's
it.
right. Then you get discouraged. Well, why didn't I qualify for the competition? Well, because doggone it, I got hurt when I was in the military and I can't, my back hurts, so I can't do it. Or because I didn't have enough money to pay for a coach like everybody else does, or because they're all younger than me. So it gives you excuses and reasons why it's okay to not qualify for the competition. The objective side's different. It requires you to put a plan in place and resources.
Yeah, I need to do that personally.
Well, yeah, and so I would take it a step further, and I would say why. Why would your objective be to qualify for a competition?
For me, it's to help me. Well, sorry. For me, it is a understanding of what I put in, and it's to show. That's a good question. I didn't think about that one.
That's part of the vision, right? If you have a super strong vision about that, then you're going to say, I want to qualify for that competition because it will give me a pro card so I can travel, or it will give me, whatever it is. If you've identified what that thing is that you are going to accomplish, that becomes very motivating. But if you don't have a picture of what that is, then you fall off the wagon and you don't go do it. And I take it even further. So why do you want to, and I'm not picking on you, I'm just using this as an example. Why do you want to qualify for a CrossFit competition? Think about that question that I talked about several times already. How's that going to work for you? Does that fit into your overall life? Does that give you is that of long-term benefit to you? Maybe it is. Maybe if you sit down and you look at it realistically, you say, for the amount of time and effort and pain that I'm going to have to go into that, I'm not going to get anything tangible out of that that's going to help me go forward. But if you think about, okay, so what could I establish as an objective that would be long-term beneficial for me physically? Maybe it is learning to ski, or maybe it's learning to, my objective is to get a black belt in jiu-jitsu, or something that is going to be of lifelong benefit to you can be more motivating. And the other thing might be a little bit of a feather in your cap if you achieve it, but it's not going to help you for the rest of your life. So when you're young and you have a big ego, you want to say, no, I want to show everybody else how much better I am at that than them. And I think that's when you get hurt, right? You pull a hamstring or you strain your back, or you do something that now you can't do any of that stuff because you pushed for something that's not going to help you long-term. You got hurt.
I found that it was actually, when I was doing that, it was a good connection with others because it was camaraderie, and so I didn't necessarily think that I wanted to, win the competitions, but in the sense that we're all going together, we're all training together. And it was and it was also more emotional fitness too, because I felt like it was a way to work on that stress and everything else.
So if I were to take that and kind of unpack that into your an objective, maybe a purpose along those lines for you would be to become a CrossFit coach. So you could pull more people into that community and engage with them and help them to grow and become better. That might be something that would be lifelong more fulfilling for you than just trying to qualify for a competition.
Yeah, that's a good one. Because I'm finding out now, because I had a buddy of mine, I was working out with him weekly, and then he moved, and then now I'm not doing that. So the objective is I don't have an actual, I loved working out with somebody. That was kind of a nice leading, but then not having that and doing it on my own it's not as easy. I don't have a goal. I don't have objectives, so that definitely means.
Yeah, you're catching yourself. Nice.
I know. It's a goal. I'm going to say objective.
I told my staff yesterday, because somebody wrote goal in one of our pamphlets, and I'm like, no, blacklist that word. No, we can't use that word anymore.
Uh,
That wellness is another word I don't like. You know, if
kind of an
somebody
odd
says emotional wellness, what the hell does that mean? But if I say emotional fitness, mentally, you think, what do you mean by emotionally fit? Well, I can give you a survey. You can take it.
Mhm.
We can establish you are emotionally fit on a scale of 1 to 10. You're an 8.
Mhm.
So how do we make it a 9? Or how do we make it a 10? So you can increase your level of fitness. Wellness is like, what does that mean? I'm going to lay on a couch and, you know, talk to some shrink about my dreams. It's that doesn't, for me, that doesn't work the same.
Well, and it's just like when I started, just real side stuff, but when I started my business, you know, 3 or 4 years ago, I started in, you know, home services, and everybody's like, what is home services? And then, you know, make a direction of, you know, exterior care. This is what I'm doing, you know, and people actually know that this is what I'm doing. I don't know, it's just crazy, but cool. Well,
One before we're almost up to the hour, but something I wanted to throw in before we're done.
Mhm.
First off, I got my Patriot Challenge shirt on.
I know, I noticed. I was going to mention that.
Patriot Challenge replaces Run Ranger Run for everybody that has, for the last 9 years, participated in Run Ranger Run. That's the fuel that allows GallantFew to exist and help veterans. Patriot Challenge, if you go to patriotchallenge.org,
Okay.
you can register, form a team now, and then February is when we start logging miles. It's the same miles like it was with Run Ranger Run. Get a team of people together, commit to everybody on the team, each one doing 2 miles a day of something, whether it's treadmill, bike, swimming, rock climbing, whatever works for you.
Mhm.
But that whole the month of February is dynamite because we have people sharing stories about how their increased physical levels are changing their lives for the better. So go to patriotchallenge.org and sign up. The other thing that I wanted to say, and it goes along with the question that I keep asking about, is this going to work for me? Because there's a problem that's going on in our nation right now, and that is Joe Schmo in Timbuktu, Kansas, thinks that if they put a certain political sign in their front yard, that they're going to change whoever is going to be president at the end of January 2021.
Mhm.
And some of those signs are, in effect, a great big middle finger to their neighbors, right? And so I understand the passion about supporting a cause and
Mhm.
being part of a political process. I totally get that. What I don't get is our willingness to put all civility aside and not have conversations with people that disagree with us. Because this is another thing that Dan Crenshaw talks about in his book on tape. And that is, it's okay. You might be complete opposite political party than me. We can still have a discussion about the issues. And we can talk about why you feel the way you do and why I feel the way I do. And we probably, after a while when we talk, we're probably going to realize that we're closer in agreement on a lot of things than in disagreement on things. But what happens now is people are telling all their neighbors to F off, and they're not talking. And it's creating a bad environment. And veterans are, well, I saw a video the other day of I think it was a retired general that got a pardon from the president, and he said, you know, be ready for anarchy in the streets or whatever. I'm like, what? The veterans we have to lead the way.
Yeah.
To be civil, to follow the rule of law. And if you haven't run for office in your community, if you haven't stepped up to be on town council or to volunteer with your Parks and Rec or any of those other things, if all you do is sit in your house and bitch and moan and put signs in your yard, I don't have time for you. That is stupid, right? Because all you're doing is making things worse. So what are you doing to make it better? Jocko Willis talks about extreme ownership, right? So extreme ownership means everything is my fault. If I walk down the street and there's a piece of trash there, it's my fault the trash is there.
Sure.
Right. So I got to pick it up. I feel a burden to go pick that trash up and throw it away. How many people have walked by that cup laying on the street for the last however many weeks, and nobody's bothered to pick it up. I'm going down a little bit of the rabbit hole, but bear with me a second.
Okay.
I had a meeting in Denton, Texas, a year or so ago. And in the parking lot, I went into the Starbucks where I had my meeting, had a cup of coffee, and I came out, and somebody had taken a fast food bag and just dumped it in the middle of the parking lot. And it had been there for a while because it had been run over by cars, and there's a trash can right by the Starbucks. So I go over, I pick it up, I throw it in the trash, and people are looking at me like, what are you doing? Well, I'm taking ownership of that, right? It's my fault that it's there, so I'm going to fix it. So what are we doing if you go back to that sign in the yard thing and the question that I've asked so many times in this interview, how's that going to work for me long term? How is putting that sign in your yard or that bumper sticker on your car or whatever it is that you're doing, how is that going to work for you long term? And how's that going to make your community a better place? And if it's not going to work for you, and if it's not making your community a better place, then do something different, right?
It's going to cause a division, and I don't know.
There's already a division, but we have. I think there's a small percent of people that are very radical on both sides, but most of us are, like I said, fairly common in the middle. But the forces are trying to pull us further apart, and don't get sucked into it. If that doesn't work for you, if that doesn't fit into your life plan, and hey, if you are not personally going to influence the outcome of the election, then just stop.
Right. Just don't. I mean, no, I stay politically neutral as well as best as I can, especially in my community, because being a business owner, being out there, definitely not putting my political perspective.
When I ran for town council in my little town, Trophy Club, Texas, and I got elected, but there were business owners that did not put, even though they supported me and they voted for me, they would not put my sign in their yard of their house because one of them was an insurance salesperson. Because this, when you're in a town like this, the town council is not, you don't declare a party affiliation. It's no party.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
But because there is a group of people, they're all friends that support the other person, they were concerned that they would say things on social media that might hurt their business. I mean, come on. Why in the world have we gotten to that kind of a point? I don't care if they put my sign in their yard or not. The bigger thing is that they're worried about doing something like that because somebody else is going to get angry and go on social media and try and ruin their business. And
I mean,
we don't need to do that.
No, I mean, I've been like that for the last 3-4 years, especially with social media, and just, keeping as neutral as I can, because people, you're worried about what people are going to think and say, and how you're going to grow your business when you have somebody that knows your political affiliations or whatever you say. Yeah, completely. So
I want the old days back where somebody can be liberal and somebody else can be conservative, and they can still be friends, and they can go sit down and have a cup of coffee. Sure. And they can talk about the issues in their community and what are they doing to fix them. And people are not doing that, and we've got to do it, or it's just going to keep getting worse.
Exactly. So, Andy, do you have any final questions, thoughts before we finish up here?
This has been really good, really informational, especially for just the civilians out there that are listening. I mean, this is really good stuff, specifically for veterans, and I understand that, but there's a lot of things, a lot of takeaways that civilians need to be hearing in this as well. I have a lot of friends that are on what they perceive as the other side of the aisle, going back to the whole political thing. And it's just so great hearing someone say, hey, we need to get back to remembering that we're all Americans. It's not me versus you. It's not us versus them. It's all of us collectively experiencing this, and you need to take control of your own experience. I really like that, and I appreciate your message that you brought today.
Each one of us has a sphere of influence.
Yep.
Right. And for most of us, that sphere of influence are the people that live near us, the people we work with, and our families. Right. So it's your sphere of influence. You can say it's this much. Well, within that sphere of influence, what are you doing to make it better?
Sure.
That's because if it's outside of that sphere of influence, I can't control whether or not Russia is going to hijack Facebook. So why should I worry about it? Because I can't do a dang thing about it. Now, if I want to make it my objective, now I got to go to school and become a computer expert and a security expert. And, you could go down that path, but you got to go down that path.
Sure.
Then you make it your sphere of influence. Focus on what's within your sphere of influence and make that better. And if each one of us did that, our community would all be better.
We'd have an amazing community.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for coming on the show again. And
all right. Good to see you again.
For those viewers and those who are listening, we're looking at doing this regularly. So we're going to do probably once a month. And then we're just going to come up with the topic. So talk about GallantFew. So everybody, thank you for listening and subscribing and following. Also, make sure to check out our sponsor, the Battle Box. It's battlebox.co. Check out the website or the email yourbattlebox.com or at gmail.com. Thank you, everybody.